Okay, behind me is the railway line that has just been green lighted by the Prime Minister and President Dissanayake. There you can see right behind me, I'm standing at the Anura railway station where the project railway line that is funded and aided by Government of India has just been green lighted by Prime Minister Modi and President Dissanayake. In fact, the entire railway station has been decked up and we're waiting for this. This train connects northern Sri Lanka to Colombo, one 28-kilometer long line that has been funded by Government of India. There you can see behind me are the leaders, President Dissanayake, Prime Minister Modi, waving to the crowd there. And I'll show you the crowd that is behind me. The reason why this is a very large queue of and supporters who are there at the station, and in front of me, Prime Minister Modi and President Dissanayake waving to the crowd of supporters. This marks the final event of Prime Minister Modi in Sri Lanka, caps the 3-day-long Sri Lanka tour that covered economy, that covered military aspects, economic cooperation, and also focused on cultural ties between India and Sri Lanka. That has been one of the most important aspects of this visit, the 3-day-long visit, where it was culture. You saw that at the Maho-Bodhi temple, where the Prime Minister was a short while back, praying at the most significant, auspicious Buddhist temple in Sri Lanka. There, from now, he's also inaugurated the other important projects that are funded and aided by Government of India. It was the power project yesterday, and today, of course, it is the railway line that has been inaugurated by Prime Minister Modi, that has been funded by Government of India. On the other aspect, the highlights of the visit has also been about military cooperation, defense cooperation in some form, those frameworks being evaluated right now, something that was mentioned very categorically in the press statement. Other thing, issue of fishermen was raised once again by Prime Minister, and it was said that it needs to be handled in a more humanitarian aspect. So a couple of very important highlights of the visit. And this event, as I said, marks the conclusion of the final event at the 3-day-long visit of Prime Minister Modi to Sri Lanka. He is the first foreign leader to visit Sri Lanka since President Dissanayake took over last year. President Dissanayake also chose India as his first foreign destination when he came to New Delhi 2 months back. So that is, as I said, the final event, and pretty much closes the loop as far as this Sri Lanka visit is concerned. Historic on more than one aspects, as I said, economy, military, culture, civilization, all of that being included in this visit, Aarti.
Can you also help us understand the significance of the infrastructure boost that India is helping Sri Lanka with in terms of the infrastructural boost, really, with the railway project that's been flagged off, for instance?
Right. Priyanka, the railway project is very significant. 128-kilometer line will connect Jaffna with northern Sri Lanka to Colombo. The kind of infrastructure projects that will really help Sri Lanka on its economic growth and progress, which is why India has been focusing on these, whether it was the power project yesterday that it virtually launched or the railway line today. In fact, it's not just the construction, but even the signaling system has been funded. Half of it has been funded by India through the line of credit system. Line of credit is a very concessional framework of providing loans and grants to countries under the Government of India. And under that line of credit is what that will further the economy and not burden it is one of the key focus areas yesterday. And also statement for energy was another very important aspect of the leader.
These are the live visuals coming in. As you can see, Prime Minister Modi has arrived at the Anuradhapura railway station in Sri Lanka and flagged off the railway line, which will now also help connect Colombo to the northern parts of Sri Lanka. India has been assisting Sri Lanka with several infrastructural projects, the latest being the railway project that has been flagged off Prime Minister Modi. Do note earlier in the day, Prime Minister Modi was also visiting the Maho-Anuradhapura temple in Sri Lanka, sort of boosting the spiritual and the cultural ties as well. Gauri, also help us understand it's not only the infrastructure and the economic assistance that you mentioned of, but also the strengthening of the cultural ties between India and Sri Lanka. What can you share on that front?
So the cultural ties, Priyanka, you mentioned that correctly, that's also been a very important aspect of this visit. The visit to the Maho-Anuradhapura temple itself is a very important aspect where the Maho-Anuradhapura temple, as I mentioned, is the oldest tree, where the oldest tree exists, which has been planted by humanity, over 2,000 years old. It is also the fountainhead or the bedrock of the Sri Lankan Buddhist branch, and which is why Prime Minister going there is very important, significant, and also strengthening the cultural ties that exist between India and Sri Lanka. It was in fact Emperor Ashoka's daughter who took the tree branch and brought it here at Anuradhapuram and planted that tree. So the cultural ties between India and Sri Lanka get further strengthened. They get emboldened by gestures and measures like these, where Prime Minister Modi met the saints and priests at the temple and also prayed there. He was there for about 40 minutes. And one also needs to highlight, when you talk about culture and civilization aspect, Anuradhapuram is also the capital, ancient capital of Sri Lanka. So coming here has more than one significance for the two leaders, and the messaging it sends to their people, to their leaders, to their political leaders and landscape. And lastly, it also matters for President Anura Dissanayake, because this is his hometown, this is his region. So coming here also has a significance politically for Sri Lankan president as well.
Gauri, also Prime Minister Modi spoke about the importance of intervening when it comes to the fishermen's matter, which of course has been a recurring issue between India and Sri Lanka as well. So switching gears, can you just shed some light on that as well?
Yes, the fishermen issue has been a festering problem. What ends up happening is that you have Tamil Nadu, fishermen from Tamil Nadu getting caught in Sri Lankan waters. Several of them say these are areas and waters where they have been fishing for centuries, and the fishermen community goes back centuries. So they feel that they cannot be deprived of their livelihoods. But at the same time, if there are international maritime boundaries, Sri Lanka says that these fishermen have violated those, and which is why they are caught and imprisoned by Sri Lankan authorities. So Prime Minister Modi raised that issue, said that we need to approach it. It needs to be approached by both sides on a very humanitarian basis and an approach to ensure that livelihoods are not lost. And in the spirit of that, 11 fishermen will be released imminently. Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri said that yesterday. He used the term imminently, indicating that 11 fishermen will be released by Sri Lanka in due course of time as a goodwill gesture, as a measure of the importance that both sides put on an issue which is at the end of the day humanitarian in nature, because livelihoods are at stake, people's futures are at stake, and also the fact that both communities, both sides have a view that cannot be negated.
Gauri, also both the leaders did highlight the shared aspirations and about the national interest also between both India and Sri Lanka. So on that front, in terms of projects itself, any highlights from that we can expect following this bilateral meet of Prime Minister Modi?
So, Priyanka, there were several important highlights of the visit. This was the final event of the Prime Minister Modi's itinerary in Sri Lanka. So his visit has officially, this is the last visit. Now he will be headed to Rameswaram. He will be headed to inaugurate the Pannam Bridge in Tamil Nadu, and he will of course be departing from Sri Lanka. But in the 3-day visit has pretty much touched upon all that matters for the India-Sri Lanka relationship to move forward from here. Maritime security is an important aspect that was mentioned. Both leaders said that there will be a broad defense framework that will be established and put in place, whether that will entail Sri Lanka purchasing defense arms from India, whether it will entail a mutual defense treaty. All those are fine print that both sides are working on, but the intent and the clarity with which maritime security needs to be addressed is itself a very important milestone in the bilateral relationship. The second aspect is the economic engagement that is set to deepen, with India now being very clear that and focused in providing Sri Lanka with the necessary economic assistance needed for long-term infrastructure growth and recovery. It's been well established, acknowledged by all political parties and the official dispensation here in Sri Lanka that India was the first to provide the biggest helping hand to Sri Lanka, $4 billion of credit line. And since then, it continues to back infrastructure projects like the one here at the Anuradhapura railway station, like the solar power project yesterday, which was virtually launched. And there is an intent to take this forward. And at the bilateral meetings, it was also decided that $100 million of loans that has been given to Sri Lanka will be converted into grants, another measure of New Delhi's intent to provide as much possibilities and potential that the Sri Lankan economy deserves and the New Delhi can. So to that extent, economy, strategic interest, convergence of strategic interest, rebuilding, strengthening civilizational ties, all those have really been the key pillars of Prime Minister Modi's Sri Lanka visit.
Right, Gauri, thank you so much for getting us all those details live from Colombo and for that extensive coverage of Prime Minister Modi's visit to Sri Lanka. Definitely India holding up the neighborhood first policy bargain and boosting economic and infrastructure for Sri Lanka.